Warning: this video contains content that may disturb you and challenge your perception of reality. Ensure you're in a safe space before you continue. Hello, and welcome to Charlie Ghostlight. I'm Charlie. Today we're talking about something that should never happen, but did. Why did a brush fire in California turn into a deadly ambush for two respected fire chiefs? Who set the trap in New York that killed volunteer responders before they could even get out of the fire truck? Stay close. Massachusetts nursing home. Inferno. 9 killed, 30 hurt in Fall River blaze. Smoke choked the night sky as flames swallowed the Gabriel House assisted living facility. Sirens pierced the chaos. Firefighters battled a 5-alarm blaze while wheeling elderly residents to safety. Lives were lost. Lives were saved. But what went wrong that night in Fall River? On the night of July 13th into the early hours of July 14th, 2025, the quiet city of Fall River, Massachusetts, became the backdrop of a horrifying tragedy. Around 11:38 p.m., a 5-alarm fire erupted at the Gabriel House assisted living facility located on Columbia Street. The fire quickly overwhelmed the building's infrastructure, trapping many inside and igniting a rescue effort unlike anything the city had seen in years. More than 100 emergency personnel responded to the scene. The fire, which originated on the 3rd floor, tore through corridors where many residents, most of whom were aged between 61 and 86, relied on wheelchairs and walkers. A broken elevator and narrow hallways made rescue efforts even more complicated. The building housed 72 residents at the time. By the time the fire was extinguished at 4:17 a.m., 9 people had lost their lives. Over 30 others were injured, including 6 firefighters who suffered burns and smoke inhalation during their brave attempts to reach those trapped inside. Fire crews worked furiously in shifts, using ladders to evacuate residents from balconies. But the smoke spread faster than anyone had anticipated, blanketing the building's upper floors within minutes. "The flames were unstoppable," said Battalion Chief Edward Dwyer. "Our firefighters had to make life or death decisions in seconds." Residents from surrounding buildings were also evacuated as a precaution. Families rushed to the scene, some finding their loved ones huddled in ambulances, others learning that their parents or grandparents were missing. The victims were more than just statistics. They were parents, grandparents, and cherished community members. Among them was 83-year-old Beatrice B. Santos, a retired elementary school teacher known for her colorful storytelling and love of knitting. Her granddaughter, Maria Santos, described her as the heart of our family. Another victim, 74-year-old Samuel Sam Brown, had moved into Gabriel House just 6 months earlier after a stroke. His daughter, Tiffany Brown, said he'd finally settled in. He was just starting to smile again. Also among the deceased was 61-year-old Arthur Raymond, a former mechanic who used a wheelchair. He had reportedly called 911 from his room as the fire spread. His voice, calm but urgent, helped guide firefighters to his location. But they arrived seconds too late. Governor Maura Healey visited Fall River the next day, offering condolences and pledging full support for a comprehensive investigation. "These were our elders, our legacy," she stated. "We failed to protect them, and we must do better." Fall River's fire chief, Jason Costa, was visibly shaken during a press conference. "We train for everything," he said, "but nothing prepares you for a night like this." Community organizations, including local churches and the Council on Aging, set up crisis counseling services and organized a vigil in Kennedy Park. Hundreds attended, holding candles and photos of the victims as names were read aloud. The mayor of Fall River, Paul Coogan, called the tragedy one of the darkest moments in our city's recent history. The cause of the fire remains under investigation, though early reports suggest an electrical malfunction near a third-floor HVAC unit may have sparked the inferno. State Fire Marshal Peter Ostrowski confirmed that the Massachusetts Department of Fire Services is working with local and federal authorities, including the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, ATF, to determine the exact cause. What's raising eyebrows is the Gabriel House's history of safety violations. In 2021, the facility was cited for failing to conduct routine fire drills and for having non-functional emergency lighting in one wing. Although improvements were reportedly made, questions remain about whether the facility's fire prevention measures were truly up to par. The building was equipped with sprinkler systems, but several residents claimed alarms did not sound immediately, and water pressure seemed low. It was chaos. No one knew what was going on, said 78-year-old resident Joanne Miller, who escaped with minor injuries. Experts are also scrutinizing staffing levels. According to records, only 5 staff members were on duty that night for over 70 residents, an arguably inadequate number, especially for residents needing assistance with mobility. This isn't the first time Massachusetts has faced a similar nightmare. In 2019, a fire at a Holyoke care facility claimed 3 lives. That incident led to a statewide directive requiring annual fire safety inspections for elder care homes. Advocates now say those measures weren't enough. "We warned them after Holyoke," said elder care safety advocate Karen Dubois. How many more lives have to be lost before real reform happens? In the days following the fire, Gabriel House's charred facade became a memorial. Bouquets of flowers, handwritten notes, and stuffed animals lined the sidewalk. Families came not just to grieve, but to demand answers. Governor Healey called for a full audit of all elder care facilities across the state. As part of the immediate reforms, the Department of Public Health introduced quarterly fire drill mandates, surprise inspections, and stricter licensing requirements for facility staff. Gabriel House was temporarily shut down, and surviving residents were relocated to nearby facilities. Meanwhile, a class action lawsuit has been filed on behalf of the victims' families, citing negligence and systemic failure. Fall River's local government is also investing in emergency response technology, including a new dispatch system designed to improve coordination during mass casualty events. Community support has been unwavering. Over $300,000 was raised within a week via GoFundMe campaigns to help affected families with medical bills and funeral expenses. Volunteer therapists continue to provide grief counseling at local centers. At a city council meeting, one emotional woman stood up and said, "I lost my father that night, but I refused to let his death be in vain." Her plea was met with a standing ovation. Idaho firefighter ambush. Gunman kills 2 first responders on wildfire scene. Flames weren't the only danger on Canfield Mountain. Sirens blared, radio screamed, and just beyond the smoke, gunshots rang out. 2 seasoned battalion chiefs, veterans of countless wildfires, would never return home. This wasn't just a fire call, it was an ambush, and it changed everything. On the evening of June 29, 2025, Coeur d'Alene dispatchers received a routine wildfire alert from Canfield Mountain. The call seemed typical. Brush fire reported in a remote wooded area just east of town. Battalion Chiefs Frank Harwood and John Morrison led the response alongside local firefighting units, unaware of the trap awaiting them. As fire crews approached the flame zone, a 20-year-old man, later identified as Declan Rowe, emerged from the tree line armed with a high-powered rifle. He opened fire without warning. Harwood was struck first, falling near a fire engine. Morrison tried to provide cover and help evacuate nearby crew members before he too was hit. Chaos erupted. Firefighters scrambled for cover, abandoning hoses and gear. Police and SWAT teams were called in, and the mountain was locked down. A tense 5-hour standoff followed as emergency teams tried to locate the gunman in the steep forested terrain. By midnight, Rowe was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A search of the area revealed makeshift camps, firearm caches, and writings that suggested he had planned the attack for weeks. Authorities believe he intentionally started the wildfire to lure first responders into the kill zone. The attack marked one of the deadliest days in recent firefighter history and left the tight-knit Coeur d'Alene community shaken. Flags flew at half-mast. Emergency vehicles lined local streets in solemn procession. Chief Frank Harwood, 57, was known across the state for his mentorship, his unshakable calm during chaos, and his 34 years of service. He began as a volunteer and worked his way through the ranks, dedicating his life to wildfire prevention and rescue. His team said he never took a day off during fire season. His wife, Diane, said he carried pictures of every firefighter he trained, calling them his second family. Chief John Morrison, 49, had recently celebrated his 25th service anniversary. He was the department's lead safety officer and known as the Shield for how often he put himself between danger and his crew. He leaves behind a son, 19, currently in EMT training, and a daughter, 14, who shared her father's love for hiking. Both men were honored at a joint memorial service held on July 5th, 2025. Thousands attended, including firefighters from multiple states. Bagpipes played as their helmets were laid side by side. The service ended with the ringing of the final bell, a tradition signaling that a firefighter has returned home. Tributes poured in from across the country. President Biden issued a statement honoring their sacrifice, and fire departments from New York to Los Angeles lit their stations red in solidarity. Social media was flooded with hashtags like Marchesh, Heroes of Canfield, and Back the Brave. Local businesses rallied support. A bakery renamed its best-selling muffin the Harwood, donating proceeds to the family. A car dealership raffled a pickup to raise funds for a memorial park in their names, but no gesture could replace the loss. Their boots remain empty, their radios silent. In the wake of the ambush, agencies across the Pacific Northwest scrambled to re-evaluate their response protocols. Idaho State Police, the Bureau of Land Management, and local sheriff departments formed a joint investigative task force to assess how first responders could be better protected on calls. One major shift was the immediate implementation of threat scans on fire alerts. Now, any 911 call reporting a wildfire undergoes a satellite and drone sweep for suspicious activity before personnel are dispatched. Fire departments began issuing ballistic vests for high-risk responses and mandated body cams for supervisory staff during remote deployments. Governor Laura Reynolds fast-tracked funding for the Harwood-Morrison First Responder Safety Act, mandating joint firefighter police drills quarterly, especially for wildland incidents. The legislation also earmarked $12 million to create a fireground surveillance unit, drones and infrared scanners that scout fire perimeters before personnel are sent in. Meanwhile, federal lawmakers reignited debates about domestic terrorism and first responder protections. A new bill titled Line of Duty Defense Act proposed harsher penalties for attacks on emergency personnel and new tech investments for real-time threat detection. Fire chiefs across the country spoke out, urging better communication between departments and standardized national training on ambush scenarios. Some, however, worried the militarization of fire response could backfire. Critics warned that too much gear or aggressive policy might undermine community trust or delay life-saving fire intervention. Still, for most responders, the memory of Canfield Mountain remains a chilling lesson. Not all threats wear flames. Some hide in the shadows. In the aftermath, grief turned into action. The families of Harwood and Morrison started a foundation called Brave Beyond the Flame, aiming to raise awareness about the rising risks firefighters face and fund safety equipment for underfunded departments. Crowdfunding campaigns for both families broke local records, raising over $1.3 million within 2 weeks. The funds supported not only funeral costs, but also mental health care for surviving crew members. The event also sparked national conversations about the mental health of arsonists and attackers who target emergency workers. While Declan Rowe had no criminal record, he had posted cryptic rants online months prior. The FBI is now working with fire departments to flag such digital signals earlier. Firehouses began offering de-escalation training and trauma-informed communication techniques to deal with erratic behavior in the field. Community groups held candlelight vigils, prayer walks, and storytelling circles where people shared memories, fears, and hopes for a safer future. High schools in the region began offering fire science courses that now include a unit on personal safety and situational awareness. Most notably, on August 10th, the first ever National Responder Safety Day was observed, a bipartisan move in Congress that saw sirens blare for 30 seconds nationwide at noon in memory of Harwood, Morrison, and others lost to unexpected violence. This wasn't just about two brave men. It was about every first responder walking into the unknown. It was about sending them out with the best chance to return. Festival horror. 11 killed as SUV plows into Vancouver parade. Candles flicker in the wind. The sound of sirens echoes through downtown Vancouver. What was meant to be a colorful cultural celebration turned into a night of horror. 11 lives were taken in an instant by a man behind the wheel of an SUV. The day started in joy. April 26, 2025, marked Vancouver's annual Lapu-Lapu Day, an event organized to honor Filipino heritage, named after the famed warrior who resisted colonization. Streets were decorated with Philippine flags, food stalls were buzzing, dancers wore vibrant costumes, and families gathered along the sidewalks. Around 3:10 p.m., everything changed. A grey SUV suddenly broke through a temporary barrier and sped directly into the heart of the parade route near Granville Street. Witnesses describe hearing tires screech, then screams. The vehicle mowed down dozens of people, leaving behind a trail of blood, shoes, torn clothes, and overturned strollers. 30-year-old Kaiji Adam Lowe, the driver of the SUV, made no attempt to brake or avoid the crowd. The crash lasted mere seconds, but the damage was devastating. Chaos erupted. First responders rushed to the scene as festival goers attempted to help the injured. Videos posted online show strangers lifting metal fencing and pulling victims from beneath the car. Lowe was immediately subdued by bystanders before police arrived and took him into custody. Eyewitnesses say he appeared dazed and unresponsive, staring blankly ahead as he was handcuffed. Emergency teams transported 32 people to local hospitals. 11 were pronounced dead by the end of the evening. In a matter of minutes, the celebration transformed into a crime scene. Families searching for loved ones clung to hope as search and rescue workers combed the area. Survivors were sent to trauma centers, and parts of downtown were locked down for the rest of the weekend. The horrifying nature of the act and its timing left people across Canada stunned and heartbroken. The victims were a mix of elders, young adults, and children. Their ages ranged from as young as 6 to as old as 71. Most were members of the Filipino-Canadian community who had come together to celebrate their heritage. Several victims were longtime Vancouver residents, while others had flown in from different provinces for the festival. One of the victims was Maria Teresa Aquino, 43, a beloved community organizer known for leading youth mentorship programs. Her son survived the crash, but remains hospitalized. Another was 9-year-old Jessa May, who had been performing with a local dance troupe just moments before being struck. The Filipino-Canadian community in British Columbia is tight-knit and deeply rooted. For many, the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival isn't just a celebration, it's a cultural anchor. The impact of the tragedy is immeasurable, creating an emotional shockwave through churches, schools, community centers, and extended families. Vigils began the same night. Hundreds gathered at Vancouver Art Gallery, placing candles, flowers, and photographs of the victims. The city's skyline dimmed for a moment of silence. Filipino associations across the country shared statements of sorrow and support. Many community members spoke of a shared grief that goes beyond individual loss. As one elder put it, "We lost not just our people, but a part of our joy." Support poured in nationwide. Local businesses donated food to victims' families, and GoFundMe pages raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in under 48 hours. Schools organized memorial assemblies. Religious leaders across denominations offered prayers and trauma support. The tragedy exposed how vulnerable public celebrations can be, and how deeply interconnected communities become in the face of pain. The investigation into Lo's background and motives began immediately. Kaiji Adam Lo, who has no prior criminal record, now faces 11 counts of first-degree murder and 32 counts of attempted murder. According to law enforcement, Lo was neither under the influence nor engaged in an act of terrorism, leaving mental illness as a possible factor. Reports indicate that Lo was previously hospitalized for schizophrenia-related symptoms, but had stopped treatment over a year ago. This sparked public debate about Canada's mental health infrastructure and whether more could have been done to prevent the tragedy. The Prime Minister issued a national statement of mourning. "We are devastated. The victims are not strangers. They are our fellow Canadians." In response, campaigning for the upcoming federal election was temporarily paused. Political leaders from all parties visited the site, laying wreaths and attending candlelight services. A moment of silence was held in Parliament. Several lawmakers called for an emergency session to discuss gaps in mental health care and safety protocols for public events. Critics argued that event organizers should have had stronger vehicle barricades or more police presence. Legal experts predict a lengthy trial, with Lo's defense potentially focusing on diminished responsibility due to mental illness. Meanwhile, prosecutors are preparing to present overwhelming physical and video evidence of intent. Civil suits may also follow. Families of the victims have begun meeting with legal teams to explore holding Lo, and potentially the city, liable for wrongful death. This case may reshape Canadian policies around event security, mental health evaluation, and access to public spaces for individuals with known psychiatric histories. In the days following the tragedy, mental health professionals were dispatched to local hospitals, schools, and community centers. According to trauma experts, the psychological scars may last a lifetime, especially for child survivors who witnessed the violence. Therapists warn that survivors might experience PTSD, survivor's guilt, and long-term anxiety about public spaces. The BC Ministry of Health has partnered with mental health nonprofits to offer free trauma counselling to all attendees of the festival and their families. In addition to immediate care, many are calling for systemic change. Psychiatrists urge policymakers to strengthen Canada's psychiatric care system, increase follow-ups on discharged patients, and improve treatment compliance monitoring. There are also demands for expanding mental health hotlines and mobile crisis teams. On the policy front, cities across Canada are re-evaluating parade safety. Officials in Toronto, Calgary, and Montreal began reviewing their own security measures for upcoming festivals. Proposals include stronger steel-reinforced barricades, AI-monitored surveillance, and faster medical response drills. Meanwhile, healing continues in the community. Faith-based organizations are hosting interfaith prayer nights and support groups. A national memorial concert is scheduled for next month, with Filipino and Canadian performers uniting for a night of remembrance. Proceeds will go toward long-term support for the victims' families. In many ways, the tragedy has galvanized a collective movement, not only to grieve, but to push for a safer and more supportive Canada. The Vancouver Parade massacre was more than a headline. It was a heartbreaking lesson in how fragile safety can be. Yet, in the face of unspeakable pain, the community has responded with unity, strength, and purpose. Let this be a call, not just to remember, but to act, to protect, to heal, to change. These aren't just headlines. They're real lives, real tragedies, and real warning signs. From the helpless cries inside a burning Massachusetts nursing home, to brave firefighters ambushed in Idaho while saving lives, to innocent festival goers crushed by chaos in Vancouver. If these stories shook you, don't just scroll. Subscribe to Charlie Ghostlight. Hit the like button if these lives deserve to be remembered. Drop a comment below. Which story hit you hardest? And remember, behind every siren, headline, and scream, there's a story that needs to be told.